EMS/medical people at music festivals. What are your most crazy stories? Baselights 2015 in Hampton, Virginia. This girl was running around the venue topless, mercilessly crushing a water bottle, which was empty, in her fist, running up to people and shoving it in the faces, screaming, "Does anybody need any water?" Her pupils were black as night, and she was grinding her teeth to a pulp. It was terrifying. Next story. Some people next to us at Fish's Labor Day weekend shows, not a fest, but a bunch of people camp outside the venue, had this bike pump. They fitted the end with a little cup and were blasting coke up their noses with it. We heard him jokingly say, "You know those people that party too hard and get taken away by medics? That's totally gonna be us." Well, it was them at like 4 a.m. Sunday morning. Next story. Not an EMS, but on the Woodstock album, there's an announcement. "Bugsy, please report to the medical tent." I know Bugsy. He was a family friend. Whoever was in charge of the medical tent heard about Bugsy, and he spent a lot of time helping diagnose symptoms and talking people down from bad trips. Bugsy was the go-to guy in town that vetted every single drug that entered that town. Until Bugsy gave the okay, nobody would touch anything. If Bugsy said it was not legit, not only did no kids use the stuff, but the older guys would run that dealer out of town for trying to hurt people. We all looked after each other in those days. Good times. Next story. This is a very famous copy-paste, at least in the music festival scene. At Echo Project, I watched a Wookit giving birth during a GZA set. I was just peeking on some 2CI. People were trying to get medical help, but they hadn't arrived. Some other Wookette claimed to be a midwife and was coaching the woman through this. Her Wook man is standing there shirtless and spun like top, just making these weird sounds while he's crushing his beer can and spraying Coors Light all over everyone. He looked really anxious about the whole thing, grabbing his face and just making grunts and stuff. The baby's head starts to crown and the medics still haven't arrived. This is where it gets crazy. It was so effing dusty out there, and the baby and all the surrounding fluids were immediately muddified by the blowing dirt. I mean, it's effing gross. All of a sudden, this effing kid, probably 19 or 20, in his oversized neon, flat-brim LRG hat, runs up yelling, "Welcome to the party, female dog," before he blows a huge plume of smoke right in the baby's face, while the umbilical cord is still attached and crap. The smell was unmistakable. This baby had just been deemstered. He must have pulled the hit from a bong, because it was monstrous. The surrounding crowd dropped their jaws, and someone tackled the kid as he starts to run away. He didn't make it more than 10 feet, and he was probably blasting off about now. The mom is clutching the dirty baby and trying to calm it, though strangely the baby was not crying. Tripping balls, I guess? And while the dude is getting screamed at, the dad suddenly pounces into action. He jumps on the dude and starts smashing said Bisco's face with the crushed up beer can, of which he seemingly just can't let go. The Bisco kid is kicking and trying to roll out of it, and the Wood dad grabs the kid's hair with one hand. He finally lets the can go and shoves his other hand halfway inside the guy's mouth. He's pulling his mouth open and rips his cheek open. Repeat, rips his effing cheek open. There's blood everywhere, and the dude lets out this Braveheart-like scream as he gets pulled off by the folks around him. Blood all over Bisco kid's face, shirt, and formerly fresh, flat Breezy. The cops/medics arrived about that time and took over the situation. Crap was crazy as hell. So I know that this is a copy and paste, but you have to wonder if the person that wrote it was also tripping as well. Like, I feel like ripping a cheek open, at the very least, would result in critical condition for the kid. And we really gonna be telling a murder story like this on Reddit? Next story. I worked campus EMS in college and got paid to watch T-Pain perform. He had them turn the bass up so much, ceiling tiles fell onto the basketball court where the concert was being held. Later in the show, when girls started throwing their bras on stage, he grabbed a handful and started humping them. Also was on duty for 303, and before the show, 2 guys walked by. I legitimately thought from the look and smell that they were homeless, but apparently it was a band. Later on, they threw a box of pasta and some chicken wings into the crowd. Next story. Obligatory not an EMS. At Download Festival this year in the UK, one of our group headbanged so hard they gave themselves a bleed on the brain and had to have an operation. Unfortunately, the symptoms were very similar to just being insanely drunk, and after spending 3 hours passed out in the festival village with the paramedics, the rest of the group being quizzed about anything we had taken, 100% nothing but alcohol as far as we were aware, and 2 days in the first aid tent, it wasn't until their vision started blurring and words slurring that they went for a CT. Next story. Got called to an unresponsive person in a stream a few years back. He was almost K-holed and high on GHB, with his head dangling off the end of an inflatable couch, just touching the top of the water. Seriously, if he fell off, he would have been a goner. As a harm reduction-based first aid team, we brought him to a semi-coherent level of consciousness and explained why it was a bad idea to pass out in the water. And he got quite upset, which led to one of my favorite quotes from a festival ever. "Bro, it's a rave, and this is how I party, man." A few inches away from drowning, apparently. Since he was awake, we brought him to shore and bid him good day. Then got called to the girl who had OD'd on GHB in the middle of the stream and was barely breathing and totally hypothermic. We worked on her for hours, and she made it. Point is, don't do dissociatives around water, kids, unless it's a rave, and that's just how you party. Next story. Not EMS, but AV for festivals. We usually are set up next to the triage tents backstage. If it's a USC event / all ages EDM thing, there will be at least a handful of people who will pass out waiting in line before the show by pre-gaming way too hard. There will also be another group that gets escorted from the door from being way too effed up to enter. Remember that these events are about making money, so you have to look like a public health hazard before they'll even look at you, but still, you have to keep in mind that big festivals house the population of a small municipality. Therefore, all of the normal medical, criminal, and social emergencies that would likely happen in a population of 40,000 people will, but amplified by easy access to drugs and alcohol. Once at Bumbershoot, I saw a guitar player have heart failure on stage. That was brutal. During the summer festivals, the people who camp main stage front row will not bring enough water. Some events are better than others. The ones who give the pit security water hoses are the most fun. They spray down the crowd in between sets and fill/give away water bottles. Some are more budget impacted or just don't. People drop like flies. I'm a big guy, and although I'm usually holding a camera or something, I've been tapped to help unconscious people over the barricades on more than one occasion. Depending on the nature of the festival, the crowd can exhibit varying levels of civility. There's a festival in Capitol Hill, Seattle that's particularly oversold and poorly designed. One year, I had to go through the main stage crowd to get to our camera platform. Almost stepped on a person passed out on the street, completely obfuscated and ignored by the people standing around them. Called the medics, but we encountered many hostile people who would refuse to move or make way for us to get in and get this person out. It was surreal. I'm a 6'2" guy with a flashlight and a radio, followed by uniformed paramedics, but I guess these people all paid out the ass to be there, so F us, right? Outside of medical-related things, the most notable are the infiltration attempts we stumble across in the AV world. There's a popular venue that backs up to a gorgeous canyon with a giant cliff behind the stage where lots of rattlesnakes live. Every time we're there, we get to see people scale this cliff in an attempt to get backstage, I guess. Some are more prepared than others. One group looked like they were sponsored by REI. They got pretty far with hard hats and such. I think they walked into Macklemore's green room tent and were finally scrutinized. It's not uncommon for us to find people hiding in the trusses or under the stage. If they aren't posing a safety risk to themselves or others, I'll ignore it, because I'm not paid enough to do security. Usually, I just tell them to avoid the powered distros and good luck. Sometimes the staff will get hurt. We move very heavy things around and hang them from poles and stuff. The last thing anyone wants us to do is call EMS. Almost all of the staff are contractors who can't afford healthcare. Remember that the stage and all the heavy stuff hanging over your head most likely assembled by the lowest bidder. Employers don't want any L&I claims or workman's comp stuff, so they make everybody on contract. EMS and the event organizers have to CYA, so they'll try to shove you into an ambulance on your dime to remove you as a potential liability. Needless to say, this world sucks and I don't work in AV anymore. It was fun to make my office a music festival, but something about how the sausage is made. Next story. Burning Man 2017 was my first and probably last burn. A dude that was hanging around my friends sprinted, vaulted, and dodged his way past numerous security professionals and managed to run into the fire. He died as tens of thousands watched. Edit. Thanks for the well wishes all. I don't carry any baggage on this one since I was pretty far away from him, but some friends of mine on the other side of the group were literally standing right next to him before he took off. They said he was quiet, but seemed tense beforehand. From all accounts I could muster, he seemed like a sweet dude, and no one expected this. Next story. I was working night shift on a festival that's known to be very lax. The mantra is basically, everything goes except for drugs and fights, security would most of the time just wait and see what happens. So as I do my round by the last open stage in my area, I see a guy sleeping on a couch. This couch is right in front of the stage, and there's no way you'll sleep through this. So I walk up to him and ask his friends if he's okay. They tell me he's like this all the time, always falls asleep while going out. I remain skeptical and tell them I'm going to need him to at least show some sign that he's not comatose. I could see him breathing, but that was it. They agree to make sure he shows some sign of life as they leave the stage, which would close in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes go by and the lights go on. Because I'm waiting at the door, I attempted to wake him up. No success. They then decide to move their friend, sofa and all, to the campsite. The guy still hasn't moved since the moment I saw him. I tell his friends this was not the deal. They shrug it off. I then look at security, imagining that someone would stop them as they were basically stealing the sofa. But no, I had to urge security myself to stop them so I could check on the guy. The guard tells the guys to drop the sofa and they do. The sofa falls a good 2 meters. The guy on the sofa is still sleeping blissfully. At this point, I'm getting a lot of resistance from his group of very drunk friends. They assure me that they can wake him up in a matter of seconds, so I let them try. What follows is 5 people yelling, throwing water in his face, and shaking him quite rigorously for about 5 minutes. The guy has still not moved a muscle. I decide to call in our site ambulance as backup, but before I can even finish my call, this guy suddenly sits up straight. He looks around, sleepy, and claims, "Did you effers wake me up again? I'm going back to sleep." He then stands up and proceeds to his camping without any struggle. This leaves me with his group of friends who all tell me, "I told you so," and an angry team leader telling me, "Before you call backup, you should know the situation. You just caused confusion for nothing." Edit. Same festival, same night, about an hour earlier. I walk past this same stage and a guy comes out stumbling, supported by 2 mates. They see us and yell, "He's yours," and drop the guy in our arms. We assume severe intoxication and start escorting him towards our first aid station. Suddenly, a girl taps my shoulder and says, "I don't know if you got the whole picture. He just tried to do a backflip off an oil barrel, but he landed on his forehead." Since then, he started sweating and became even more unintelligible. This gets me worried, of course, so we hurry to the tent. I put him down on the stretcher and ask him some questions about how he's feeling and what happened. As the festival was in a part of the country with a dialect I was unfamiliar with, I could always ask myself the question, why don't I understand him? Is it A, dialect? His friends were also hard to understand, so this was definitely an option. B, drunkenness. He reported somewhere between 40 and 60 beers, so this was also a good guess. Or C, brain damage. He hit his head hard and was suddenly sweaty, so this was strike 3. On his forehead, I find a dimple about a centimeter deep with the skin still intact. Just a deep dimple. The guy fractured his skull and had to be rushed off by ambulance. Next story. I went to Lollapalooza 2006 to see Queens of the Stone Age and the Red Hot Chili Peppers when I got a heat stroke. Queens was playing right before the Chili Peppers, and me, my friend, and his girlfriend decided we wanted to stake out a spot near the front where we'd be able to get a good view. They had these fences going up to the middle leading to the soundboard, so we staked out spots against it to have something to lean our backs against. We tried to bring in a giant jug of water, but security wouldn't let us, so we each brought one small bottle inside and decided to take turns filling them up at the water fountain. Most of the day was fine, but it was one of the hottest days of the year and it got brutal. Eventually, the crowd around us got so big we couldn't walk to refill our water. A bunch of us sat around in a circle talking, and the security guard with a ponytail and handlebar mustache walked up to us and said if any of us had any weed to trade, and he would hook everyone up with waters throughout the rest of the day. We all looked around, giving each other, "Is this guy for real?" looks. I had weed, but no way in hell was I trusting this shady F. The day went on, but being out under that brutal hot sun was definitely taking its toll on us. We got water sprayed on us occasionally from security people, but it was not enough. QOTSA was awesome, and we were looking forward to the Chili Peppers. About one song into their set, my friend's girlfriend was feeling like she was going to faint, so he told a security guard and they pulled her out. A couple songs more, and he looks at me and asks if I'm alright. I didn't want to say anything, but I felt awful, like I was going to pass out and seeing things like I hadn't slept in days. I tell him I'm fine, but he looks at me and says, "Dude, no you're not. You should go too and have them look at you." I eventually caved and got pulled out as well. The security guard walked me down the path to basically the front of the stage and then off to the right to a patch of grass with a bunch of sick people. He sat me down and told me to wait. About a minute later, some lady comes to check on me. She points a flashlight in my eyes and says, "What'd you take?" I told her nothing because I hadn't taken anything. "Come on, what'd you take?" I told her again, "Nothing. I've been in the effing sun all day." She says, "Uh-huh," then signals over to someone who comes and dumps a bucket of ice water on me and gives me a bottle of water. I just sat there, soaked, for the rest of the concert, and then try to find my friend and his girlfriend after the crowd had cleared. I finally find them, and they ask me why I'm all wet. I ask why isn't she wet? Even though we both got taken away for the same thing, I was the only one that had a bucket of ice water dumped on me. She got a bottle of water and to peacefully enjoy the rest of the concert from the side. Still pisses me off to this day. You know, as a huge Red Hot Chili Peppers fan myself, I would be so pissed if this happened to me at a music festival. Finally get to see Kiedis and Flea and the gang, and this happens? Oh, I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain. Next story. I'm an EMTB. I worked on anime convention nearby, and let me preface this by saying that every neckbeard weirdo on the face of the earth showed up to this thing, along with a slew of every other weird drug-using person you could imagine. They had an entire hotel rented out in the entire convention center for this 4-day event. It was 11:30 p.m. on the first day when we got a call for a possible seizure in one of the hotel rooms rented out for the convention. We show up to a girl who is butt-ass naked, strapped to the bed via leather bindings, as well as a giant black metal vibrating dildo who's actively seizing. The girl is seizing, as well as the dildo inside her. Her sexual partner called us and bailed. He neglected to remove the dildo, as well about a dozen other various-sized phallic objects. My partner worked on getting an IV in her while I untied her and removed the massive dildo from her. We got some Versed in her which stopped seizing and she was okay, but absolutely nuts how we found her. Next story. Not a medical person, but this story involves one. Does that count? Peach Fest 17. Last day. My buddy and I were about to leave. We were actually going between campsite and car, packing our crap away in small trips. There's 7 of us standing around at this gate, waiting to be driven to the car, when this hippie-looking dude walks up and asks someone for a smoke. One kind guy obliges, and then this dude just starts talking. You know how a stereotypical hippie will start telling a story all slow-like and drags out the word man? He did this. Classic. Nobody asked him to start telling the story. He just went for it. Story goes, from perspective of hippie guy, at festival whatever in the 90s, I was working as a bodyguard. My tent was near the medical tent, so I saw some crap go down. Once, these 2 dudes on LSD, one a skinhead and the other a black guy, were stuck together in a medical tent, both having a bad trip. They were yelling at each other, but they were high, so they kept forgetting why they were so mad. So the yelling was just circles of noise. Eventually, medics come in and try to stabilize both guys. But if you've ever done acid, you'll know that medical questions aren't how you help alleviate a bad trip. That's got to come from a personal, not professional side. So anyway, I see this going down, and I step in and convince the medic to let me take over, considering I've done acid plenty of times. So I get in, and I start asking very basic questions to these guys. Where are you from? What's your name? Are you high? The black guy says, "Yeah, I just wanted to listen to Metallica live for the first time in my life." The skinhead responded, "Dude, my favorite band is Metallica." Eventually, these 2 start getting over their fight and start bonding over their favorite band. It was like magic in an instant. Once these 2 found something in common, became not only amiable, but friends. And I mean good friends. I saw these 2 attached at the hip for the rest of the festival, both singing and dancing side by side, watching Metallica headline the festival. It was a surreal moment for me, too. If you've ever seen hatred get subdued by pure kindness and love, it's a magical experience for everyone. We all learned a lot that day. I haven't forgotten that hippie guy. He was strung out, but he was a good soul, and he could tell a effing good story. Audience, I just want some honest feedback. How do you think my Southern hippie impersonation was? I think it was pretty good. I don't know. Nah, maybe it sucked. Whatever. Moving on. Next story. Oh man, I have so many stories to tell. Usually, when I tell these stories to people, I like to focus on the grosser aspects rather than the technical part. So I apologize if the technical part is what you wanted to hear. People in the medical/first responder field are typically superstitious here. Some people are referred to us as white clouds for those who get the boring calls, while the other are called black clouds for people who get all the exciting calls. People who know me refer to me as the crap magnet because for some reason I get all the weird crap. One of my nastier stories off the top of my head. I worked a music festival last summer as part of the medical staff. I think it was about 35 degrees Celsius on that day, and hotter with the sun shining down on this open field. My partner and I were flagged down to attend to someone inside the women's porta potty. Apparently, she had been inside for 2 hours, and there was no response when security tried to knock. We forced the door open, and immediately, the smell of rotting crap hit us right in the face when we found this about 15-year-old girl covered in her vomit with her panties at her ankles in a bag of Coke on the floor. She had been baking inside this literal crap hole for 2 hours, and no one bothered to check up on her. Anyways, we scooped her up after making sure she was still alive and took her to our medical tent so the doctors and nurses could check her out. This was really early on in the event, and I think it was the fastest I've ever ruined the uniform shirt in a shift. I also do medical at a stadium where concerts and sporting games happen. Worst night for me was one of the rap concerts, Future, I think. Rather than one specific patient, this was the entire night of calls. Usually at rap concerts, the calls will be non-stop as soon as the first call comes in. I had a total of 4 patients through the 4-hour event, while there were others happening at the same time. Right when the doors opened, we got a call for an underage pre-drinker outside of the arena gates. My partner and I went, and there was this 16-year-old boy that was piss drunk with a police officer standing next to him. The cop calls in the wagon so that he can be taken to the drunk tank where he can sober up until his parents can get him. We stay with him just for liability. As soon as the wagon pulls up, the kid starts spitting at us and swinging his arms. So the cop just says F it and slaps cuffs on him, reads him his rights, and tells him he's going to jail instead of the drunk tank. Before I can try to clean the spit off of me from the previous call, we get another call to the men's room for another intoxication. When we arrive, we find this boy sitting in a pool of his piss with his sober friend. We take him to our room where he can have some privacy so we can monitor him while we try to figure out what to do with him. Get him a ride home or send him to the hospital via ambulance. We get this guy on our bed and his friend thinks it's a smart idea to remove the patient's pants without telling us. He does that and a log of crap comes rolling out of his boxers as he pisses himself again. At this point, the friend starts telling us how he's trying to tell us that his friend isn't drunk and he knows better than us because he's a second-year science major. Unfortunately, I can't remember how this one ended, but I think we got security to handle the friend while we just sent the patient to the hospital. After I wash my hands from the previous patient, we get called for someone passed out inside the bowl of the stadium. She was breathing and had a pulse, but she was completely unresponsive. She looked like she weighed 200 pounds, so I got security to help me carry her out to the concourse. As soon as we go into the concourse, she starts flailing her arms around and screaming, "I want my mommy!" Because of her swinging arms, we just had to drop her on the floor or else we would have been knocked out with her. We somehow managed to get her up onto our stretcher, and when I tried to get her legs buckled, she kicks me right in the eye. The paramedic crew came and tried to restrain her using a sedative. I tried to get my eye checked out, but we got an alert for the next call before I could do that. For the grand finale of the night, we got an alert for a gang fight happening in the VIP lounge. There were probably 10 cops there when I came to check up on some of the guys, but this one is relatively boring to talk about. I did get some blood on my shirt though. So at the end of this night, I ended up with a shirt covered with spit, blood, and maybe some piss and crap and got kicked in the eye. After this, I couldn't be bothered to clean my shirt, so I just disposed of it and requested a new one. Yeah, kudos to UOP for putting yourself through all of this and not quitting on the spot. I don't care what the salary is, this just ain't worth it. Man, oh man. Next story. Since no one really has a good story yet, I'll contribute mine. So this story happened about 3 years ago now at Summer Camp 2012. Great year, by the way. Anyway, it was about 2 to 3 a.m. at this point, and all the big facts were done for the day, but my buddy and I were still going hard on a candy flip. We didn't have anything else to do, so we decided to go wandering through the forest to look at some cool trippy crap. For those of you that don't know or have never been to summer camp, the forest is basically an open-air market of debauchery with all kinds of crazy crap going on all the time at any hour of the day, but more so at night because everyone is spun as F. So there we are, walking down the dirt paths, saying hi to people we met on our way when we hear some shouting coming a little ways up the road. This wasn't just a normal shouting of typical wooks being wooks either. This was more of an angry, "Get that effing guy!" yell. A few seconds later, we see this styrofoam cooler come flying out of the trees, and the yelling gets louder and louder. Seconds after the cooler came flying out of the trees, a young man of probably early 20s also comes stumbling out of the trees after the cooler. Now, when I say this guy was essentially the epitome of white trash, I do mean it. He was a very pale, super scrawny guy that had a shaved buzzcut hairstyle, was wearing a wife beater, and had the loosest pair of jeans I've ever seen on a person that was also being held up by a literal piece of rope. The most striking detail about this character, though, was that he also had a busted eyebrow that was gushing blood down his face and all over his wife beater. This is where things get interesting. As my buddy and I are standing there in total awe of what's unfolding before us, a mob of about 4 to 5 people come chasing this guy out of the woods onto the path, saying things like, "That's the guy! We need security!" and "Grab that mother effer!" All while this Kid Rock entourage reject is slurring his words, saying, "Nah, man, it ain't me, dude. You guys got the wrong guy." At this point, someone tried grabbing him, but he wiggled loose and started to run. However, to my total shock and surprise, festival security were there within seconds of this guy getting loose, and 2 of them jumped off the souped-up ATV they came in on and tackled this guy. Mr. White Trash put up a good fight, I'll admit, but in the end, he was subdued, hog-tied with zip ties, feet to ankles, did not look comfortable, and carted off. We found out later that this scumbag was beating on his girlfriend while tweaking on meth and alcohol, although I doubt the booze played into it too much, but who knows. That was the craziest crap I've ever witnessed at a festival. Next story. I did Glastonbury a few weeks after qualifying as a paramedic. First night shift was with a local GP as my driver. He'd been to every Glastonbury, a true gentleman, and suggested watching the sunrise from the stone circle. The next night I worked with a small town EMT who was frightened of people that were high and wanted to take everyone to hospital if they'd so much as been around drugs in the last 72 hours as, quote, they might be spiked on OD. Best patient was a girl so wasted on ketamine she'd not noticed her ankle was badly broken. She'd sprained it on Friday night, took it easy on Saturday, but dosed up with Ket on Saturday night, to the point she was dancing on it. She got a ride to the hospital. Next story. Worked a large electronic musical festival in 2016. A patient found a snake somehow in the woods nearby, carried it around in his pocket until he was in the rave pit, and took it out. It proceeded to bite the living hell out of him. He dropped the snake and came to the med tent. Well, it turns out that another festival goer found the snake, picked it up, and put it in his pocket. So the story repeated 4 more times. Finally, the poor snake bit a patient through his pocket, and he came in with the snake, unable to get it out of the cargo pocket, pick included. 5 patients, 1 snake, lots of drugs. All hail Party Snake. Next story. Not an EMS/EMT, obligatory, but it's a story about a medical personnel misbehaving badly at a festival. I work the gate at a regional burn. We had a great night, my partner and I, on a few substances. We danced, watched the lights, got freaked the F out by some effer who put LED flashers in a balloon and flew it over the site. A great time. We staggered down to the gate for our 8 a.m. shift, thermoses of coffee and bags of jerky in hand. Checked in with our Vikings, perimeter security, ranger contacts, and found our clipboards. The gate didn't actually open until 9. We were there to do meetings and get all the stuff prepped. Soak ran Thursday through Monday, and we'd come in Thursday night. It was now Friday morning, and the handful of cars that had missed the cutoff Thursday night were lined up in the entrance lanes, either sleeping in their driver's seats or with tents popped up behind. Then there was Jackass. Jackass was parked in the lane, and up bright and early, swigging from a jug. It looked like kombucha, but honestly, who the F knows? He turned on his music. No one paid attention to him. He cranked his music. No one paid attention to him. He started singing. No one paid attention. One of our rangers informed us he'd come in late and had a discussion with a Viking last night and was probably effed up, but they were going to play him by ear. As we ignored him, he started to approach other people in the line. At first it seemed normal, slightly off-kilter festival goer, except he keeps escalating. People don't want to sing. They're caffeinating and brushing their teeth. It's 8:15 a.m. We suggest he turn his music down and things quiet down for a bit. Then he gets bored, suddenly leaps into his car, slaps it into reverse, tries to pull a J-turn, does a few donuts, and takes out one of our fence lines. Then he parks back in the intake lane and pumps the music back up. We consult with rangers and decide he's not coming in, but that we're not going to be confrontational. He can have the lane and we'll just ignore him and direct everyone around. We start letting other cars in. He keeps escalating. Finally, a producer comes down to chat with him and tell him security is excluding him from the event. She's one of the kindest people I know. Things do not go well. The plan had been to let him sleep off whatever he was on so she didn't risk a DUI. But suddenly, producer straightens up. "Get the F off our property!" He's bounced. Instead, he pulls back into the intake lane, does a few more donuts, then spends 15 minutes lecturing us about Buddhism and how his inherent worth as a free man means he's allowed on any site he wants. We're suppressing his aura and enslaving him. As we called sheriff's deputies, he finally left. It turns out he was a naturopathic physician, and during the conversation with the Vikings overnight, he'd name-dropped a patient who was on staff for the festival, which, as you may well know, is a massive effing HIPAA violation. I believe our producer reported that as well. Next story. So since there are no actual EMS providers chiming in, I guess I will. I volunteered with a rescue squad that was tasked with providing EMS for the Blue Ridge Music Festival. It was a very small-scale music festival that went on for 2 days. It was far from a huge festival, but there were hundreds of people present, and it was a bit of a logistical nightmare. So the first year they did this festival, we were woefully underprepared. We had maybe 40 or so providers, and it was all hands on deck. But we were split up roughly 20 on one day and 20 on the other. The temperature outside was in the 80s or 90s, and they were serving tall 24-ounce beers to people as the only alcohol you could get. You overpaid and got these tall boys and then went on and crushed it out in the heat, where there was no shade as it was a smaller high school-sized football stadium with no real covering. They had the bright idea to cover the field with this big black tarp, and everyone was out laying on this thing all day. What resulted was a effing redneck bloodbath. First of all, these were people that were not used to the festival atmosphere. Local bros, country girls with their country cowboy boots on their feet all day, not drinking enough water, getting crap-housed on these tall boys. It was a recipe for disaster. A lot of people didn't realize that you can't dome 24-ounce beers like you can dome a standard 12-ounce six-pack. But there's still beer in your can, so you keep drinking and only count that as one beer because math. It wasn't long before the radios were blowing up. We had drunk people falling out all over the stadium. We had people stationed all over the place trying to respond to calls, and while on their way, they would stumble upon someone else that was covered in vomit and not able to sit up. Then we had teams dedicated to the parking lot because people were pre-gaming out there. It's next to impossible to respond to a 911 call for a drunk guy passed out next to the back of the pickup truck when that's the scene every 5 feet. I would head to a call for someone down, seizing, or injured with 3 or 4 people and have to send the other providers off in different directions to follow people asking for help with other sick, injured, and seizing people. I vividly remember stepping out from our little tent and seeing the massive drunks we'd collected. All these people, piss drunk, lying around drinking the water we gave them. I watched as a girl walked up, started vomiting, and just walked along this whole row of people spraying them. It was a war zone. We got our asses handed to us for 2 days straight, and thankfully nobody was seriously injured or died. But we probably sent 15 to 20 people to the hospital over the course of the festival's 2 days, and treated/released 3 times that many. Again, it was a smaller festival, but still, for us, this was way more than we were equipped to handle. We were stretched thin, but somehow got through it. So the next year, we knew this cluster F was coming, and we planned accordingly. We brought in 3 other rescue squads to help staff it. We set up rapid exit points at 2 points of the stadium. Basically, if a call went out, the decision was made that a medic would assess the patient. If they were deemed too sick or effed up or whatever, to remain at the festival and take care of themselves. They had 2 options. PD would escort them off the property, or they had to go to the hospital. Obviously, if someone was not competent to refuse transport, they also went to the hospital. Instead of sitting on these fools, anyone too drunk got those two choices and were dealt with quickly. We would have ambulances stationed at either end, and as one took a patient, another would take its place. It might seem like overkill, but yet again, we were pushed to the limits, even with twice the manpower and a much better plan. This time, though, things went 1,000 times better. We borrowed a FEMA morgue tent and used morgue stretchers to set up a rehab area. Basically, if you were just feeling a little sick / needed to get out of the sun, you could come into this giant freezer designed to store bodies after natural disasters and lie down on a corpse cot. It worked perfectly. We would rehab people. If after 10 minutes they were still sick, it was once again either leave or go to the hospital. While that sounds harsh, it's not like we were booting people for just being drunk. I'm talking people falling down drunk or having obvious medical emergencies. It was a good example of learning from your mistakes and developing a revised action plan to handle a large group of people, behaving like idiots, out in the sun all day, not taking care of themselves. Again, nobody died, and we didn't have a huge number of hospital transports, but one girl around 9 p.m. was drunk as F and fell in the middle of the crowd and broke her effing ankle, bone obviously protruding. She didn't want to leave because whoever headliner country music star was coming on. We had to strap her to a board while she was still standing trying to see the headliner and carry her out of the place by like 8 people. 3 out of 10. Won't ever work large crowd events ever again if I can help it. Next story. Actual festival EMS worker here. In brief, we get tons of crazy stories and they become routine. But the first I remember was the guy who was found naked but for his sunglasses running around Bonnaroo, attempting to non-violently evade EMS. He came in restrained to a backboard, equally confused, energetic, and friendly. Managed to flip himself and the board off a cot, talk to all the other patients, etc. Woke up unaware that he was naked. We'd covered him up, obviously, with no memories of the night before or where we left his clothes. Sent him on his way with his sunglasses and a blanket. Shout out goes to the young lady who did the same but was covered in only glitter and was absolutely sure we were aliens. Tried to unsuccessfully climb the fence before getting a sedative in the butt. Next story. Not an EMT, but at Lollapalooza last year, I saw this girl climb a tree and was stomping / jumping on a branch like 20 plus feet up. Then she just laid down and straddled the branch, arms and legs hanging off, thinking she finally passed out, only to surprise us when she came back to life and started jumping on his branch again. Then, quite expectedly, it broke and she fell, hit the ground hard. I don't really know what happened after that because my vantage point wasn't great, but I do remember seeing her and thinking that she was on some kind of trip. Next story. EMT here. This literally happened last week. I was working a rave and I had a patient who took a lot of MDMA. I mean, a lot. He ended up being escorted up to our first aid room by security. When he got poked for a blood sugar, he ended up on the floor kicking his feet and flailing his arms around. He was being super combative with us to the point where he wrapped his arms around my neck at one point. My partner at the time called for more security, PD, and an ambulance. Me and one of the other security guards had to restrain him on the ground until the medics got there. He was sweating like crazy, trying to keep him held down. Paramedics came and gave him something to calm him and took over care. That was a fun night. Next story. My dad was an EMT at a Metallica concert, and he said that they refused to start the show without a tank of oxygen for all the band members. My dad, being the stubborn ass he is, wouldn't give them more than one for the band. He sat and argued with James and Lars for 20 minutes until the crowd started booing. Not really crazy, but my dad's a effing legend in my book for that. Next story. So, at Splashy a few years back, an acquaintance of mine was drinking Captain outside his tent with a bunch of mates. Said acquaintance is a bright soul with alcohol issues and a problem with homosexuality. While he's drinking, another mutual friend walks past and says, "Oh, Captain, I'd love some of that." Acquaintance turns round in macho fashion and says, "Sure, if you lick my balls." My mutual friend is gayer than a tree full of monkeys on nitrous, so he promptly says, "Okay, show them." So my homophobic acquaintance got his balls licked by a guy who, in his words, just really wanted some Captain Morgan. It gets better, though. Same acquaintance retired to his tent a night or two later with his girlfriend, before emerging a little while afterwards, screaming and with blood-soaked boxers held over his crotch. Girlfriend, braces and all, follows after him. It seemed she'd gone down on him with disastrous results. So Emo, we'll call him that because that's his name, makes his way to the medic tent, bare-assed save for his boxer shorts held in front of his junk. Upon arrival, the medics were prompt. They called every other medic over radio to come and check out the dude who got his chicken cut open from oral sex. Later, stitched up and swaggering, Emo returns to his campsite to announce that he had 15 stitches to repair his damaged dangler. His poor, shy girlfriend, who had followed him through this mortifying ordeal, finally had a voice. She quietly announced that she'd had one stitch. A few years later, I was chatting to someone who told me about how they'd worked EMT at Splashy, and their highlight was some random dude who'd got his chicken cut up from oral sex, and she'd commandeered a security vehicle to drive across the campsite to check it out. Next story. Here's a good recent story for you. Mid-July, working as a paramedic at a festival. Pretty quiet all shift. Finishing up at midnight and getting excited to go party with friends. Call comes in over radios that security is chasing someone down who's in full drug-induced freakout. Start heading that direction in case medical needs to get involved. Arrive on scene to 6 people trying, not very successfully, to hold down this shirtless guy who's thrashing on the ground, absolutely losing his mind. Polypharmacy on board. No further info on what he's ingested. Dude is screaming at the top of his lungs, bloody murder. The only part of him not being held down is his head. Starts to bash himself face first into the ground while chewing through his lip/tongue. I'm now holding his head with all my might while he's trying to bite my fingers. Crappy latex gloves I have immediately tear, so I'm covered up to the forearms in this dude's sweat and blood. Managed to get something soft under his face so he can't pancake his face anymore while prepping drugs for sedation. Managed to sedate and strap the guy down to a board where he had a nice little snooze at the med building until whatever he took wore off. Washed off, clocked off my shift, and hit the dance floors. Festivals. So I think it's cool that despite going through all of that, at the end of the day, you just clock out and party on anyway. Don't let that dampen your life. Next story. Just 2 weekends ago, I was at Rocky Glass chilling on my tarp listening to the tunes when a lady 10 feet in front of me starts screaming, "Help!" over and over. Her 18-month-old kid was choking, blue in the face, and his eyes were starting to roll back. I was an EMT many moons back, so I flipped him over and gave 4 back blows to clear the watermelon chunk he was choking on. Happy feelings all around. Next story. I was at EDC Vegas and stopped by a med tent with my boyfriend so they could wrap his shoulder that he hurt in the pool the day before. We were outside waiting to go in and saw 4 guys trying to drag their friend to the tent. The dude was on something I've never seen before. He was jumping up and down aggressively and shaking his head and looked like he was having a seizure. All 4 friends were having an extremely hard time getting him under control. Once he realized he was close to the med tent, he somehow broke free from the 4 guys and booked it back towards main stage. His friends took off after him, along with 2 cops. They managed to get him close enough to the tent, and a med person ran out and literally stabbed him with a needle/some tranquilizer, to which he immediately collapsed and finally got carried into the tent. My boyfriend and I stood there, just staring at this whole ordeal in shock. I've been to a lot of festivals and have never seen someone behave like that, even on multiple party drugs. I have no idea what he was on, but it was terrifying. The guy wasn't even big, probably 5'7" and not more than 150 pounds. Yet it took 4 friends, 2 cops, and a tranquilizer injection to make him stop. Keep in mind, this was like 2 hours into the festival on the first day. Next story. I worked a summer for a correctional facility. One night, we get a call to pick up a guy about 20 after a festival. The cops would meet us halfway. So me and another guy head out to the gas station, about 60 miles away to meet the cops. Get there, and the prisoner is the skinniest little white kid we've ever seen. We had to have a belt around his waist to link the handcuffs, but it was so loose, it could have slipped over his shoulders. And man was he high. Thought we were his best buds and didn't realize he was headed to jail. He wasn't just there for drugs, before you all get too up in arms. He had attacked a few people at the concert and injured one, but he was calm with us, talked the whole time about how he was part of a tribe, and the chieftain loved him more than his own son, and would be a great warrior soon. This is why I meanted the white part. I knew plenty of Indians, and this kid wasn't one. We get to the facility, and kid claims the wristband, like to get back into the concert, is super spiritual and was given to him by his chieftain. I worked at an arcade in high school, and we had the same wristbands to put on kids that that paid for the bouncy house. Officer at the correctional facility is processing him and cuts off the band. Kid loses it. Next story. A guy at a freak night in Seattle took all his clothes off and started self-pleasuring in the men's bathroom. When people asked him to stop, he just looked them dead in the eyes. While self-pleasuring it shook his head. Both of them, really. Nobody would go near him, and he was blocking the urinals. I'd be lying if I said I didn't shamelessly take this opportunity to just cut the line and use the urinals anyways, while he was aimed at everyone else. The best part was when I saw him getting escorted out by security several minutes later, doing some truly fantastic jazz hands. Next story. Actually EMS at a music festival here. Definitely not the craziest thing, but it was one of my favorite calls I've been on, because no one got hurt and I was brand new. Somebody calls me over because some old guy is having a heart attack. Immediately, my fresh out of school brain leaps into action and walks over to this older guy. He doesn't seem to be in any apparent distress, but he says he's dizzy. Going through all my textbook questions, I eventually land on what he last ate. As he tells me it was a chocolate cake that was being passed around, his eyes go wide and he stammers, "Am I high?" Yes, you are. I haven't been high for 40 years. I feel like such a square. It was just so fun to watch the realization come over him and to be there while he decided to make the best of an unexpected trip. Next story. Paramedic here was working standby at an EDM type concert, rave. At the end of the night, I had to wrestle a gay dude wearing only a jockstrap and butterfly wings out of a water fountain. Some bad XTC was going around. Must have been cut with an upper or bath salt type deal. As I was working with a whole bunch of insecure dudes that didn't want to catch the gay, they elected me, the queer dude, to get this guy out. Next story. Not a medical person at all, but was once told a story by a paramedic who was once working in a music event in Slane Castle. He got a report about some drunk guy struggling in the river, so he went to see if the guy was okay. He goes to the river with another paramedic and sees the guy in the water. He had drank a lot of beer and eaten a load of crappy concert food, so they got in their boat and went to save this guy. As they get the boat ready, the guy stops moving. By the time they get to him, his heart has stopped beating or was dangerously faint. So the paramedic buddy started doing chest compressions, while the paramedic telling the story started to do mouth to mouth. Something must have happened involving rocking the boat. The combination of the alcohol in the food and the chest compressions, so the guy vomited. This would have been fine, but the vomiting took place while the paramedic was giving mouth to mouth. He couldn't just stop saving this guy's life, so he swapped places with the other paramedic and started to give chest compressions with a mouthful of a stranger's beer and burger vomit, and continued to do so for 10 minutes until the guy's heart started beating regularly again. Next story. Was at Midtown as a patron and came across an underage dude that drank himself unconscious. I was trying to keep his head up when this older dude came up and started chewing me out for, quote, encouraging underage drinking and forcing alcohol in him. I told him I was an off-duty paramedic and was actually trying to help the kid, not aspirate and unalive himself. Told him if he'd like to help, he can flag down a police officer or staff member who could radio to EMS instead of thinking I was making things worse. Quickly left us with a half apology and a thanks for taking care of some random kid that I don't know. Hope he enjoyed the rest of the festival. Ended up coming across 3 alcohol-related patients over the course of 4 hours. So much for a vacation, lol. Next story. 4th of July festival. We get a call for a fight. No lights or sirens needed except to disperse the crowd a bit. On the way, we get upgraded and police are asked to join us. Unfortunately, they're currently dealing with a higher graded call. Just before we arrive, we're informed that one of the fighters has bitten 2 people and is screaming that he has Hep C. This is very serious. So on the way over, stuck in 4th of July traffic, we run into some local cops who join us on our way. Food smells good, music is fun, we arrive on scene. First thing we see is a big dude hunched over by some trash cans, huddled over by 3 women. I didn't see anyone else out of the normal at first. We approach and ask how he's doing. Says something along the lines of, "That guy attacked me, he's got Hep C." We turn around to see a particularly sweaty dude in a wife beater, a pair of what could be best described as triangular denim jean shorts, and lastly, a stained pair of boxers. Of course, these were basically fully exposed. As we walk up to this upstanding citizen, he makes a break for it, and our lovely officers in tow join him until they all make it to the ground. This is sadly in front of many youngins and elderly folk just trying to enjoy the music and fireworks. Once on the ground, he gives up, and his His girlfriend shows up crying, asking what's happening, what we're doing, etc. We ask him about the altercation and if he has Hep C. He's unclear on the disease, but very clear that the other guy started it and is completely at fault. After transporting the two, we got word that the biter did have Hep C, and a while later that the bitten was lucky enough not to have contracted it. Next story. My mother volunteered on the medical tent at the Woodstock Festival in '94, and my favorite story she told me was one dude with whom she had this conversation. Mom, do you know where you are? Guy, no ma'am, you're at Woodstock Festival in the medical tent. I'm at Woodstock? Yes, in the medical tent. Which drugs did you take and when? There was some bad acid going around, and she was pretty sure that that was what he had taken, but was hoping to time it. Oh, wow, Woodstock. Man, I always wanted to go there. What's the last band you remember hearing play? The Doors, man. Morrison. The Doors didn't play in '94, on account of Morrison being dead and all. Also, apparently it rained and people were sliding down the hill in the mud, and then someone had the idea to dump out the porta potty to make it more slippery so people could slide faster. They did slide faster. It's true. Yeah, I'm not sure if slipping around in poop soup is worth sliding faster, just saying. But again, we're talking music festivals here. The influences that they are under are strong. Next story. Sorry, not EMT, but my first year at Okeechobee 2017, I had a chick jump in with our crew on the first day after she left hers because they were doing hard crap. Security was super lax. She failed to mention until that night that she was diabetic and left her insulin at her old camp. She insisted that she would be fine. We go out and party the first night and had a blast. Woke up the next morning and she was delirious and forcing herself to vomit. What the F? I asked if she needed to go to the medical tent, which was a 5-minute walk, but she refused. Luckily, some volunteers were passing in a gator and asked if she needed help. I told them her problem, and they took her to the medical tent, and I told them I'd come back for her in an hour or so. I knew she was in good hands, and I don't want to miss out on some of my favorite sets. Sorry if that seems selfish. Later on, I go to the tent, and what do you know? She had effing vanished along with the crew that picked her up. I asked the workers that are there where the F she is and describe her, but no one has seen anything. Crap. We basically lost her and didn't hear about her the entire night. I woke up early the next morning, groggy after a night of fun, and used the pisser about 200 meters straight down from our camp. As I'm walking back, I see 2 cops and 2 older women standing at my camp where my dumbass friends left their drugs and paraphernalia out in the open, mainly hallucinogens and whippets. I'm like F, thinking I'm about to get arrested for some crap, when one of the cops turns to me and asks, "Are you the silver potato?" To which I replied like a smartass, "Who's asking?" They told me I wasn't in trouble or anything, and then something weird happened. The lost chick's mom runs up and hugs me, thanking me for saving her girl, and I'm like, the F? Apparently, she was in such terrible condition that they rushed her to the ER, and she was in the ICU recovering. I told her it was the crew that saved her, but she wouldn't have it, lol. Her grandmother was the other woman, and they were all super nice. We packed up her stuff and gave it to them, and they went on their way. I kept in touch with that chick for a while, and not even half a year later, turns out her mother passed away. I wasn't going to ask how, but that was the strangest experience of my life. Next story. I'm not EMS or any med service, but I did help save a girl's life at Electric Forest in 2013. As I'm walking back to my camp, I turn the corner and first see a friend looking on a close neighbor's site, and then I see some kids standing around this poor girl having a seizure on her stomach. We'll call her Molly. I've been going to festivals, big and small, for almost 15 years, and it wasn't that long ago when RCs, research chemicals, were being sold as real drugs, such as LSD, MDMA, ecstasy, and other hallucinogens. So when I finally roll Molly over, she's foaming at the mouth, seizing, face turning blue, so I immediately put her on her side. Immediately do this if you see someone having a seizure, and put my half-frozen water bottle on her head while trying to calm her. I start asking her friends what happened, and of course, they had all taken some MDMA, but Molly took some LSD. I asked if it was bitter, and of course, when Molly put the small piece of paper in her mouth, she said it was bitter. None of them had been educated on test kits or the signs of an RC. That's when Molly just just went limp and wasn't responding at all. So I run out to the main road, which was pretty much the main entrance to the stages, and begin yelling, "Medic! Medic!" A Mountie, security on huge horses, came galloping up, all radioing an EMT cart. They begin an IV and take her away. It was pretty frightening. If you or your friends are new to getting drugs from strangers at large events, bring a test kit. I suggest dance safe. F the bunk police too. RC. Research chemicals are similar to real drugs, chemical design, but are only analogs. Little is known about the effects if combined with other drugs, so word to the wise of taking LSD from a stranger: if it's bitter, it's a spitter. Next story. Not an EMS/medical person, but I've come across my fair share of people who just had way too much. The one that stands out in my mind is when it was closing time and everyone is heading out. I'm walking along and I look down to see this tiny girl huddled on the ground by herself. No one is stopping to see if she's okay, so I crouch down and tap her on the shoulder. I get like zero response from her, so I'm telling myself she might be in trouble. I tap her on the shoulder again, and this time she looks up, but she's clearly not there at all. I take off my hoodie and drape it over her shoulders. I look around to see if I could make eye contact with anyone that could help, because honestly, I was still tripping balls. I grab some guy that's walking by and ask him if he can go flag down someone from the first aid tent. He didn't even hesitate and turned around and ran to the tent that wasn't too far away. I waited with her for what seemed like forever, asking her if she could tell me her name and if she knew where her friends were. The EMS guy finally got there and took over. They started asking me questions like what did she take and how long ago. I told them I didn't know her and that I was just walking to my car when I saw she was in trouble. I asked them if there was anything else they needed and they said no, and so I left. I still get kind of mad when I think about it and wonder where the hell her friends were. You don't leave someone that's high as a kite by themselves like that. Next story. A festival I was at, where my dad was working as an emergency responder, had a guy get his face smashed in with a brick. One of his eye sockets was so destroyed that his eye fell out. That was very much a fringe case, however. The majority of things he had to deal with were people too high, drunk, or both, and making sure they didn't hurt themselves or end up ODing. Other incidents from other years and festivals include a girl snapping both her ankles. It was a particularly wet 3 days, and her legs got stuck in mud while she kept moving. Next story. Here's the story of a friend's experience at Bonnaroo. My group got to our campsite pretty late Wednesday and didn't really do much that night except for a little drinking. We woke up around 9 Thursday morning and noticed one of our friends' let's call him John, just staring around with this confused and disoriented look on his face as if he had no clue where he was or what was going on. I asked what was wrong and I was told he took half a tab of acid last night and he's been tripping for nearly 16 hours. I thought he was acting like this to get attention for whatever reason, since he claims he's tripping balls 16 hours after taking half of a tab. I wasn't camping with him, so I didn't have to put up with it. Fast forward to Friday afternoon. I noticed I hadn't seen John in a while. I asked where he was at, and his friends he was camping with said he was missing. They hadn't seen him in 36 hours. Turns out, he just walked off not long after I saw him Thursday wearing only jean shorts. No shirt, shoes, or anything, just his shorts. Turns out, John walked out of Bonnaroo late Thursday night. Re-entry wasn't allowed, so they cut his wristband when he left. He walked back in and was arrested for trespassing. He spent the night in jail until his friends went and bailed him out Friday morning when he contacted them and explained what happened. He was blacklisted from Bonnaroo and could not get back in, so his friends left him at the jail for him to figure out what to do. He ends up going to Walmart, still wearing nothing but jean shorts, buying a wristband from someone he met there, and coming back. He just showed up to the campsite again. I didn't see him till Saturday morning. Saturday morning rolls around and I notice John is back with his group. I'm filled in on everything that happened with him. He's acting perfectly fine, like nothing happens. Then, like the flip of a switch, starts to pace around frantically and acting noticeably flustered. People are asking him what's wrong, to which he replies, I don't know. His friends end up calling EMS to check him out. Turns out, when John came back to Bonnaroo Friday evening, he wanted to catch up with his friends and took 0.6 grams of Molly in 2 hours. He was severely dehydrated when EMS checked on him. He was resisting their help and wouldn't let them touch him, becoming aggressive and nearly violent. EMS ended up giving him a shot of ketamine to calm him down. They took him to the medical tent and gave him an IV to help hydrate him. When he was well again, they escorted him out of Bonnaroo and cut his wristband. John walks back into Bonnaroo through and is once again arrested for trespassing. He was sent to jail again and spent 2 more nights there until his hearing Monday morning. Next story. It was Halloween. I don't remember what the bands were, but it was some Halloween-themed nonsense, and everyone in attendance was just effed. Someone screams, "Medics! Medics!" which is a bad sign. That's the audience screaming. House staff call us by our organization name and always over walkie-talkies. So imagine, you're a 5'4", 100-pound woman with a trauma pack, and you run into this very dense crowd of people, and everyone is pushing towards whatever the F is happening. Boom! In the men's bathroom, there's a man of about 6'2" walking in circles from the waist down. The upper half of his body is flopped over, so he's just mopping his own blood around the restroom floor with his face. He keeps screaming, "The limousine is coming to get me!" I guess he lost the fight. Someone must have decked him real bad. That was some Ronda Rousey crap. Anyways, my 2 fellow EMTs arrive. One is my height, the other is 5 feet. We somehow managed to get a collar on this guy and get him on a backboard. At one point during the process, I'm actively standing in a urinal. He told us he was not going to the goddamn hospital because the limousine would pick him up. EMS picked him up instead.